Hey everybody, welcome to Concussion, the podcast that dives deep into the world of brain trauma, breakthrough treatments, and inspiring recovery stories. Today, we're talking about the WNBA and how many concussions there have been and what injuries have came up after those concussions. I think this is going to be a great discussion, so please stay tuned and let's get into it.
Thanks for organizing this again, Travis. It's great to touch base with you and kind of loop in some things that are relevant to our discussion and are happening in real time. So thank you all for joining us. Today we're going to talk about some relevance of what's important to us on the Concussion Podcast and how you can see this play out essentially in day-to-day life. Specifically today we're going to go through some instances in the WNBA, what we've discussed with knowing that there's been a concussion and the incidence of an increased risk of sustaining a lower body injury. And Travis regurgitated this stat perfectly, which is after a player has sustained a concussion, been pulled from play, went through the concussion protocol, and then been cleared to return to their sport, they're 11.3 times more likely to sustain
non-contact lower body injury. So like a tear to the ACL or something like that.
Exactly.
When they go to move, the brain just doesn't operate quite as fast as it used to. It has to go from, instead of point A to point B, it kind of has to reroute like there's a traffic jam.
Exactly.
And you have to, and your GPS reroutes you around it. It takes you a little bit longer to get there. And that's like subconscious, right? You don't even realize it's taking longer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here's a kind of a removed example of that. So for instance, one of the things on the to-do list today is I need to rewire something that goes from a battery to a radio. However, there's several places where this wire's been butt spliced and put back together and connected into other things. So the first thing I'm going to do is figure out where along this line there's either a delay or a loss of connection. So within the brain, we have different compartments that are responsible for talking to each other. So that could be each connection within that line. So my objective is get the radio to turn on immediately, but there's a delay in that. So going through all those different connection points, seeing where the signal's lost, seeing where there's a delay in circuitry relates to having a malfunction on the end of the radio. But really it all starts at what happens at the battery through the wire, what needs to be rerouted, what needs to be replaced or enhanced. But I was just thinking of that. That's like kind of another example of we have to kind of trace this back to where do the commands come from? Where does the power come from? To be able to figure out why the output might not be ideal.
Gotcha.
So anyway, it kind of just illustrates we're missing something on the concussion rehab side because these players in the study that we were referencing or in the NBA, they have access to an excellent level of care, people who are doing their best to help these players in every way they know how, but we're just missing the part that can optimize the efficiency in the motor commands. So this season in the WNBA, there were 3 notable concussions, and we're going to kind of discuss those in the relevance of what we are trying to bring a little bit more attention to on the concussion front.
Yeah, so we're talking about the WNBA, 3 girls who got concussions, and this season, 2025, we're going to break it down, and it's going to be exciting.
And we're early on in this season. So started at the end of May, and we're coming up on the All-Star break. And the team that Travis has decided to root for this year is the Washington Mystics.
Yeah.
And they have 2 rookies that made it to the All-Star game. So that's a big deal for them. Washington Mystics drafted these 2 players, Kiki Irifin and Sonu Citron, and really were these unexpected players that just excelled in the WNBA. They had a great college career, but they just really took off in terms of their performance with the Washington Mystics.
It's a Cinderella story.
Yeah.
Yes.
They didn't have the limelight or expectation that other players might have, but they've really surprised everyone with how hard they're working and how much they're able to generate and how efficient they are playing for the Washington Mystics and getting a good offense going there, and especially defense for both of them as well. So Travis's team is one that we're going to pay a little bit more attention to after the All-Star break because he's new to sports.
I'm new.
So we're not going to invest in an entire season start to finish, but we're going to kind of pay a little bit more attention now that the All-Star break's over. The intensity picks up a little bit. And before we get into the 3 concussions, Travis noted that he saw an impact that got his attention. First of all, it came up on his social media.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal because our tracking cookies are in two totally different pantries. Sports will generally come up on mine because those are things I interact with and engage with.
Yeah.
Sports do not come up on yours.
No, never ever do I see sports.
Right. So for one to come across your scrolling.
Yeah. It's got to be significant. And that's, as a matter of fact, that's exactly what the person said.
Really?
Yeah. The person's like, hey, look, not everybody watches this, but everybody's talking about Caitlin Clark and this.
Have you heard that name before? No.
No.
Interesting. So that's how far apart our pantries are with our tracking cookies.
Yeah. You don't even want to know what my feed
I don't want to know what else is in that pantry, but there's definitely not the cookies that would lead to Caitlin Clark, which is amazing. It's kind of impressive because she's been such a pervasive influence to women's sports, women's basketball for a few years now, and you've never heard that name.
Never.
And it's a notable name, like you'd remember. It's kind of an alliteration. And
Caitlin Clark, yeah.
It was like a superhero type name.
Yeah.
So she is definitely the most influential in terms of attention to the sport. She's made non-basketball fans engage in basketball. Even came across Travis, who is so far away from basketball fan, was still coming across things that you engage with. So I have intentionally kind of shied away from using any impacts or collisions that she's experienced to tie into like injury risk, because there is an insane amount of attention to what she's doing, how she's playing, how she's reacting. It is too much, but either way,
it's like they're using that for attention.
Yeah. So adding to that is not productive. But the collision that he did send me was significant. She didn't hit her head, but you could certainly see how much whiplash occurred as she took that impact. And that happens to her often during the game. And there's a lot of pressure on the referees of stop letting this happen. Right. Like the physicality is getting out of hand.
It's almost like, hey, we're playing against Caitlin Clark. Like, let's find her and we're going to, and it's almost like they know that may get views. And it's like, I mean, that sucks to be Caitlin Clark, because oh, great, people are out to get me because it gets views.
Now, do you want to hear the counter to that argument?
I do.
So if you are getting that much attention from refs, coaches, other players, if you do take a screen or some sort of contact that's a part of the game, there's some scrutiny that maybe that's embellished in the response.
I like it. Yeah. Hey.
So there's two sides to that. And also the conversation around what the refs are doing, what they're calling and what they're not, is under a lot of pressure right now. Like coaches are really ramping up their expectations of this stuff needs to be controlled in a game. But then there's other players that are like, physicality is part of it. If you're going to let it happen, let it happen.
Yeah.
Just don't be inconsistent.
Right. Don't be babying it. Like, don't let them play. Let the players play.
And I agree with that too. Yeah.
But then you're right. Like maybe it is embellished. Shakespeare said all the world's a stage, and
perfectly put.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because this is a massive stage for them. It's getting a lot of attention. There's a lot of media attention, sponsorship. There's lots of opportunity there. And it's a matter of how do you contour that to fit your brand, your message. But the physicality has definitely been a hot topic. But the reason I'm shying away from that a little bit is because it doesn't need another layer of scrutiny into how she's playing, what the consequences are, and what that can mean for her injury risk. But I will say that she has missed some games this season due to injuries, non-contact injuries. And there was a play where I think it was not on purpose, but she kind of got kicked in the head by Brianna Stewart underneath the basket. And then afterwards came out of the game with quad strain, was out for a while, came back in. And then the game where she had a groin strain, which is the most recent injury, that entire game was a series of motor control issues. Things that were not typical of her movement patterns, not typical of her level of skill. You can kind of see that system might have been challenged a little bit.
Motor control. And that's like when I say, like when I was doing the drop sticks and I say, okay, right hand, go here and grab that. So it is like
command to action.
Command to action.
Yep. Or perception to action was the example we gave early on. Perception, action, coupling, how those two things go together. You perceive something needs to be done and the action to complete it, which in sports would be perceiving that you need to change position, take a shot, make a pass. All those things happen in just milliseconds. Fast decisions, fast motor responses.
Yeah.
So she has had some more injuries this season than she has had previously. Also notably more impact, more collision, more whiplash. But we're not going to focus too much on that because, like I said, there's just such an intense level of scrutiny in how she plays because she is so visible. So we'll next talk about the concussions that have been diagnosed and what that looks like from our perspective. And again, we have a very biased perspective, but we're looking at concussions and how it affects circuitry in the brain, how that affects motor responses, performance, affect, everything, even emotional regulation.
Affect.
So how you respond to things emotionally.
How you feel. Yeah.
Yeah. Like everything about that, like your disposition, your responses, which that's a big deal in sports too.
Yeah.
One of my colleagues, he's actually one of those brilliant functional neurologists I've ever met. He uses his indicator. I'm looking more so at cerebellar function and vestibular responses to indicate when a player may be compromised. His biggest ticket is he looks at unregulated emotional responses. So if someone is usually cool, calm, and collected, and then they just have an outburst that seems very out of character for them, that's what gets his radar pinging a little bit.
Tell me that's Dr. Schaller.
No,
but he's into that, right? He's like...
Dr. Schaller. He's going to cover the science behind why we experience that. I'm so excited for his conversation because his understanding of concussions is just tremendous in terms of how he can make it relatable, understandable, and digestible to those who can't otherwise have a framework in which to understand them, which is essentially all of us until we've encountered one or know somebody personally that's encountered one.
Right.
Because it's an invisible injury, as you have explained, that
right.
you can't show somebody what's wrong.
Right. And I'd seen a quote somebody had said on, and it's from Scrubs, I think. And the quote was, "If you want sympathy, get a disease somebody can see."
Simply put.
Yeah, because
that is I'm so glad you brought that up because that is the biggest struggle for these athletes when they're suffering. Nobody can understand it. So they're further isolated in this struggle of recovery.
Yeah.
Because nobody can say, I sprained my ankle too, or, oh, I dislocated my shoulder too. They have like the visible signs of like the ice pack on the shoulder or the arm hanging to know that I've had an injury similar to that, or I know how badly that hurts because I've seen someone else go through it.
Yeah.
But you can't see what's going on in their head.
Right. So there you go. WNBA. If you want sympathy, you're going to have to break your leg.
Yes. You might not get the appropriate amount of understanding and empathy with a concussion that you would with a physical injury.
That's not a suggestion from the Concussion Podcast. Don't do that. I'm not a doctor.
That's a good suggestion. So there was the concussion recently with Paige Bueckers. So what happened in the game is she was attempting a drive and she had a head-to-head collision with Courtney Vandersloot. So they both went head-to-head, had this impact force. Courtney Vandersloot stayed on her feet and recovered backwards. Paige Bueckers went down. There was a period of about 5 to 10 seconds of like that physical anguish look of, just hit my head and it hurt.
Yeah.
Now, Paige played on the rest of the game. After the game was over, after the adrenaline calms down, then she was a little bit more aware of the symptoms, had a headache, other concerns that would put her into that concussion category. Her team was very responsible, put her on concussion protocol, did everything as they were supposed to. However, there were two, they say it takes two to tango.
Yeah.
There are two heads in that impact.
Did the other girl get a concussion?
She was not diagnosed with one.
It's a mystery.
However, she tore her ACL 3 games later.
Non-contact. Not.
So there is a lot to be said about that. And to be fair, this player, Courtney Vandersloot, did have a concussion 2 seasons previous. I think a prolonged recovery, but did recover very well. And this season, she looked phenomenal. She was back to her old self. She was just a go fast, get it done kind of player. Not the tallest player, but the most creative in how she could make plays happen. Get balls to, get the ball to whoever's open, create space for players. So it was really, really a sad one because she had worked so hard to recover from the first one. Finally seemed like she had a breath of her fresh air playing how she used to play. And then partway through this season, and again, this is all obviously speculation. We're watching from an armchair, watching the games unfold. We do know that she did have that head-to-head impact. And then shortly after, and that could have been something more in the category of a second impact syndrome, could have been unrelated. But either way, it's just something notable that there was a head-to-head impact. One player was diagnosed with a concussion, the other one wasn't. And the player that was diagnosed with a concussion
went through the concussion protocol, did all the right steps,
came back in, played a few games, and then went out with a knee injury. She's now back in, so what thankfully was not a serious knee injury. She's had her fair share of serious knee injuries. So thankfully that one was not as season ending.
And the girl who she collided with did not get diagnosed with a concussion. Mm-hmm. And 3 games later, she has a non-contact lower body injury.
Exactly.
Which is a season and it was an ACL tear.
Yeah.
Which is that's season ending injury.
Where did you learn that acronym? You've been studying.
I think you told me.
Oh, okay.
Maybe. Yeah.
Well, good retention either way. Yeah, an SEI, season-ending injury. But that'll sometimes show up on like roster availability, injury reports, SEI. So that one was definitely one to reflect upon, because if one was diagnosed and the other one wasn't, but we know that they hit with the same impact. The big difference I see is in terms of shock absorption, because Courtney Vandersloot stayed on her feet to absorb the impact. She likely did not have as prevalent of those symptoms versus Paige Bueckers, who went down to the ground and was visibly in pain. But the hard part is these athletic trainers, the sports medicine doctors, everyone who's watching from the sideline can't pause the game and rewind and see it again like we can.
Watching from the sideline, you can't pause say, whoa, look at that.
Right.
Right, because it's live.
Exactly. And all you can see sometimes is just the aftermath. And these players do take a lot of impact. There's collisions all over the place. So you can't have that high alarm response every single time a player goes down. So it's really challenging to detect these a little bit better. And then also to have the know-how on the concussion recovery side, because it's just not common knowledge right now what we need to be doing differently with rehabbing concussions, because it's taking forever for what has been illustrated in research to reach mainstream medical intervention. And that's something that we talked about last time, how that lag leads to sometimes lapses in translation of all this knowledge that's been discovered, and takes a little bit longer to get to the implementation side because of that.
Yeah, 10 to 17 years. It's like you're always playing catch up.
Mm-hmm. So that's part of why we're doing this, is because we really want to decrease that time frame. Like we can't stand to wait another decade without changing the way we rehab concussions if we want this ACL crisis to stop.
Yeah. And that's what we're doing. We're bringing you like the latest breaking information, the most up-to-date information on concussions, concussion protocol, TBI. We are trying to bring that to you right now, not 15 years later. Yeah. Like as soon as it breaks, we want to break it to you.
And then we know that there's some things in the works that are about to be published. Once they are published, we will unpack all of that here, which is pretty exciting stuff, because it's a new framework as to how we're missing a big piece of what's going on with these female athletes specifically. But that'll be an exciting episode once that article gets published.
Yeah. And I did I tell you about my ChatGPT thing?
No.
So I set it up so that it searches and it goes out every morning and it looks for like any type of major latest breaking updates on concussions. Like if a player gets a concussion, like it searches like everything.
Really?
Yep. And then it'll just bring it back to me automatically. I just say, what's the latest in TBI? That's all I type in there. And then it runs that search protocol. And if there has been any players that have been hurt out, it immediately reports back to me. And then we can update everybody with that.
Did these players show up?
So I haven't run it.
Okay.
I haven't run it.
Interesting. So that's a great way to kind of like keep in the know, because there's so much happening every day. There's sports going on all over the place at the same time. So that's a good way to kind of get the more pertinent information quickly. Yeah.
The main thing that came up when I did run it was that the new way to diagnose concussion. We did an episode about that.
Oh, with the biomarkers?
The biomarkers, things like that.
So another player that sustained a concussion this year that was diagnosed and pulled was A'ja Wilson. So she sustained it probably about three or 4 weeks ago, was pulled from play at the time of the impact. So she knew right away something was not right. So that tells you it has to be pretty significant if the player identifies something's wrong.
Yeah. When you know like something's off. Like, hold on.
So she came out of the game, went on concussion protocol, came back in an appropriate amount of time, and then returned for, I'd say like 2 to 3 games. And then in a game, one of her teammates was passing her the ball when she wasn't looking. I think it was just a miscommunication on the play. And it just whopped her in the head, like kind of like those cartoon things where you see the head dip down after the impact. And I don't think that really registered on the Richter scale of concussions at all, but just still there's a little bit more heightened awareness of head impacts after a known concussion. Did you find that with yours, that you were a little bit more sensitive to things that might hit your head or do hit your head?
Yeah. So I became more reactive, like hyper aware of what I think actually became hyper aware of everything. Like I was extremely in my sympathetic nerve. It was very easy to get me into my sympathetic nervous system. So I was very jumpy and kind of overreacted in a protect everything manner.
Yeah.
I mean, my head, like the protect the head thing probably was in there.
Yeah. So I've had several patients tell me that even in their recovery process, they know that there's no longer any swelling in their brain, and they're doing well. They seem to be a little bit more responsive to incidental impact with their head. That's not concussive forces necessarily, but like one patient gave me the example, like splashing around the pool and somebody hit them in the back of the head with their arm. There was not nearly enough acceleration. It didn't displace the head, but it was enough to get your attention, like that whop on the head feeling. And that can create an enormous response that might not be warranted otherwise if you hadn't recently had a concussion.
Yeah, for
or
sure.
not familiar with the consequences of a concussion.
Yeah.
Could even just be that you know what's at stake. But the same way you could probably imagine if you had like a Tommy John surgery on your elbow for the next couple of years, you're going to be really sensitive to what happens around that elbow that had surgery.
Who?
A Tommy John surgery.
What's
so
that?
Baseball pitchers, it's named after Tommy John.
I thought that was a restaurant.
Is it? You're thinking Johnny Rocket?
It's like a
baseball restaurant?
No, I'm thinking Jimmy John's.
Oh, Sub So Fast You'll Freak. That's the highlight of going to some airports sometimes. It's just, if they have a Jimmy John's, you know you're not going to miss your flight.
Jimmy John's, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. But
So,
Tommy John's. Tommy John
surgery, so an unordered collateral ligament repair. But again, it's not in your pantry of tracking cookies, so probably haven't come across that.
No.
Yeah. So anyway, just to say that like your brain becomes hyper aware, your sensory map might change a little bit after a limb has had surgery. So that same hyper aware protective mechanism that goes on in any body part after surgery or after an injury probably is similar to how sensitive we get about impacts to the head after knowing you had a concussion.
Yeah. So I'm wondering this, like, does your amygdala have anything to do with that? Like, so threat detection center, your amygdala, right? In the center of your brain, threat detection. Maybe now that after you've got a concussion, the signal, and it used to be routed maybe around the amygdala. And now your brain is saying, well, hey, let's send that to the amygdala just to make sure that we don't get, well, I don't know. I think your amygdala kind of picks stuff up first.
Yeah, I think your amygdala is like that, like threat to life, like where you get into that kind of more primitive response.
Yeah, the sympathetic nervous system that increases the size of the alveoli in your lungs and your blood vessels in your legs and brings your heart rate up and your blood pressure up and dilates your eyes, your pupils.
Mm-hmm. An intense response.
Amygdala. That's
so
cool.
Asia Wilson got back in the game, had that little bop on the head, but like I said, not something that would be considered something, well, that player needs to be checked out. Not like that. Just a hit to the head that was
from the basketball.
Just wasn't watching, or miscommunication on the play. I got hit in the head. Played on another couple games, and then now she is out with a wrist injury. And that does not necessarily fit our criteria in terms of what that study that we discussed explains, that it's a lower body non-contact injury. However, I will say that the manner in which she sustained the wrist injury, I would argue, could be explained by delayed motor responses. So she was in the area of the basket. She's a post player, so they're often moving full speed or very quickly towards the basket, and there's collisions. The defenders are there. People are trying to disrupt your shot. She did have a collision, and as she went down, she braced her wrist awkwardly, resulting in the injury.
So
she didn't have the fast reaction time to be able to get the usual pattern in which you brace yourself. So typically there's like a little bit of flexion in the wrist, elbow, and shoulder to absorb impact. And even the lower body, oftentimes you'll get your knee or your hip down first to slow yourself. But those patterns weren't there. So again, this is just for the purpose of the discussion, not to necessarily place blame on the concussion caused that, but just for consideration that we know the concussion disrupts the reaction, the perception and action response time. So she perceived she was going towards the ground, but the action of getting her body ready to brace and slow herself down was delayed.
And this is Asia Wilson.
Asia Wilson, yep.
And how, like, explain the contact that caused her to fall.
A collision with a defender by the basket.
Collision with a defender.
Yep. So she was going up to take a shot. Obviously, somebody's trying to stop her and defend her. And there's body-to-body contact all the time.
Was she in the air?
Like, she was in the air when she got hit, yeah. So she was from there coming down.
Gotcha.
But...
So I was thinking maybe kind of she got hit and she normally would have braced herself with like her quad.
Oh, like if she was standing and got hit.
If she was standing and got hit. But if she was in the air and you're right, okay, so maybe the way when she didn't quite brace herself the way she would have normally.
Yep. And again, it's all speculation from the armchair. But just important to start thinking that way so that we start understanding that this correlation between concussions and injury is significant enough to understand how that happens so that way our concussion recovery can start to address those things. Faster motor responses, visual reaction time is a big one too. But all this communication that needs to happen incredibly quickly, as it did before the concussion, has to be restored if we're going to reduce these injury rates after concussion.
Gotcha.
And then last one is Shakira Austin. So
that's not the singer.
Shakira. Not the singer.
Got Shakira Austin.
Yes. So
Washington Mystics, my team.
Yep.
I was just kidding. I knew that. I knew it was Shakira. The singer.
So she played on Unrivaled, which is a league that they came up with in the off season.
Say that again.
So played with the league called Unrivaled.
Unrivaled.
So that you're familiar with the WNBA now. They run from like May. Their games run from like May to October.
Okay.
So from October to May, these players oftentimes would have to go overseas to make money. So, well, let's get your guess. How much money do you think Caitlin Clark gets paid to play in the WNBA? How much
per game?
No, per year. Like, what's her salary? The most notable
$1 million
basketball player, because she came across your tracking cookies. $1 million a year.
But to be fair, I don't know how much any sports people make. I don't know what
so like football is hundreds of millions.
Hundreds of like one person makes hundreds of millions of dollars. What?
And then tens of millions of dollars is very common as well.
What?
Yeah.
For 1 year?
Yeah. This might change Travis's trajectory from wanting to be a full-time podcaster to a full-time professional athlete.
Yeah. I mean, you've seen how I caught those freaking sticks.
Seriously. You could be a professional golfer. We have to start golfing today though.
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. Do you want to stick with the guess of $1 million a year?
$1 million a year.
Okay. She gets paid $70,000 a year. This is like a teacher salary.
What?
Yeah. So her male counterpart in the NBA is in that tens of millions range. This is real-time processing of facts. Isn't that bizarre? And she's influential enough.
I mean, that's not a lot of money. I mean, that's a lot of money to a lot of people. Like 70,000 is pretty good for, your average person, I guess. Well, I don't know. I think the median household income is like, I have no idea. Sorry. I don't get it big into like incomes and stuff.
Yeah. But either way, that's very different than it would be if she were playing in the NBA. Same game, same sport. There's a big difference.
That's a huge tens of millions versus 70,000. What
would you do about that?
Well, man, I would. So if I was getting, what would I do personally? Mm-hmm. So I'm a big advocate of changing me. I guess I would, I don't know, man. Because you can't just become a dude and just join the NBA, You
would join the NBA?
Well, I guess you can't.
Right.
I don't know, but I'm sure there's a lot of effort that goes into that. That's probably not just like a 9-to-5 job.
So it's a tremendous amount of effort. It's training. Pretty much your entire day revolves around it. Your entire month while in season revolves around it. Your off season revolves around preparing for it. So I was just asking to kind of get your candid input, because this is a big issue right now for women in sports. Okay. This is the pay equity. So the U.S. women's soccer team had this massive undertaking of fighting for equal pay while they were in a World Cup year 19. And they finally got their federation to acknowledge that they deserve equal pay because they're doing equal work. The women had a lot more marketing opportunities. They were much more well-known, won more, did a really phenomenal job for our country, but the men were getting paid significantly more and nowhere near as productive. So this fight is ongoing, and it's something that's very prevalent in the WNBA right now as they enter like a collective bargaining agreement year. But that's just a glimpse of what it's like for player salaries. There are other players that are making $35,000 a year to play a professional sport where people are buying tickets, coming to see you. You have to be ready to perform at your best. So what would happen is in that time between...
I got an idea. I know what I would do.
Let's hear.
I would start like getting hit all the time and then making a big deal out of it and then try to pick up some sponsors. Like when I get
Through
hit.
getting
like,
hit.
Yes.
So who's going to sponsor you for getting hit?
I was maybe, I don't know. I could maybe get on some podcasts, get real famous, like build my name up.
Okay.
Maybe.
Well, just to ease your mind a little bit, Caitlin's not hurting for money because her sponsorship deals are with some of the biggest insurance companies and so she's with State Farm. Like
boom.
She's making more from sponsorships than in one sponsorship deal than an entire season of WNBA play.
So she's smart. Like that's the way.
That's what these players have had to do is they have to market themselves and find their own ways to generate revenue because they're not making it from their paycheck. But before the league had this much attention, these players would have to go from October till the following May with just dormant time. However, not making enough in the WNBA, they would go overseas and make 10 times the amount to play overseas.
I would just stay over there.
So they would go play for Russia, for France, countries over there where there's a little bit more financial equity for these players playing at a really high level. So what happened this past year is there was a few players that took it upon themselves, and some other individuals as well, to create a league on U.S. territory that fills that gap with much more pay equity. So that league was called Unrivaled. So it ran from the end of the WNBA season to the beginning. It was a 3-on-3 league.
Okay.
So that way they didn't have to have as many players. Not everyone had to participate, but they could make several teams. And it got these players in tip-top shape because 3-on-3 is hard. Yeah. They're normally playing 5-on-5. It's a little bit less running and physical demand, but 3-on-3, you're always on. Like you're not facing sometimes where you can just go sit in the 3-point corner and wait until the ball gets to you and make your 3-point shot. You have to work for every shot that you get, every possession that you get. So that is Unrivaled. Shakira Austin played in that league, and I believe she sustained the concussion in Unrivaled, as did Tiffany Hayes. So they are the ones that have been kind of picked up this season as identified concussions. Shakira Austin is still playing, so she has not been injured since. But the research has shown that window of vulnerability, in the example we gave for the NBA, that 11.3 times more likely is within 90 days. However, other research has shown that window of vulnerability is as far out as 2 years, where somebody is 4 times as likely to sustain a lower body injury, so 400% more likely, and even beyond.
Does it? But it reduces as time goes on.
To some extent, yes.
Gotcha.
Yes. However, another consideration of that is your retention of those players. So if a player has sustained several concussions, the longevity of their career is much different than players who have not. So if you're looking 2 years out, how many of those players are still competing at that same level to collect that data? So once you're cleared from a concussion, the chances of you still playing for 90 days is pretty good. But the chances of you playing 2 years out or beyond might be a little bit more compromised because we know how much it affects their ability to engage with their sport.
Yeah.
And there's just so many variables into that. How intense was the concussion? How many have they had in the past? All those things play a role into how significant that concussion will be.
Especially like if they've had previous concussions.
Exactly.
It seems like, well, just from the stuff that I've been looking through and researching, if you have one concussion, you're more likely to have one in the future.
Exactly. And we know all those things still relate. So a little bit of hypersensitivity in the head, but that delayed motor response will make you more likely to sustain a concussion. Decreased visual reaction time, more likely to sustain a concussion.
Balance.
Poor balance. Exactly. So all those things kind of play into it. But that was just, we'll continue to follow this. Like I said, now that the WNBA All-Star weekend is pretty close, the intensity of the league is going to kind of pick up a little bit because it's going to get closer to playoff times, and there's already been such an intense level of competition and a lot of physicality. I imagine that trend is going to escalate a little bit as it gets to be higher and higher stakes towards the end of the season.
When people are pushing a little bit harder, and maybe also some, what's the word I'm looking for? Complacency. Like, if you've done something so many times, do you feel so confident that you maybe don't put as much effort into it because you've got so good at it?
Yeah, if you've had a really good start to your season, you might become a little bit more complacent. And then again, those underdogs, the ones that are dying to get to that spot of being in the playoffs, might turn it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So we'll continue to talk about this through the rest of the season. But thank you all for joining us for this section, and we look forward to talking to you all again soon.
Yeah, and just to wrap it up, we covered the notable concussion cases in the WNBA, and that was Paige Bueckers,
Asia Wilson,
and Shakira Alston.
Plays for the Mystics, which will be Travis's team to follow through the season. And they're looking really good, so it should be an exciting second half of the season for you.
Nice.
Yeah, that'll be good to watch. All right, we'll catch you all next time.
All right, thanks for tuning in.